Join Samantha and Hans at the next Macro to Micro Options Power Hour held each Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Registration is free. Scan this QR code or click on the link in the description.
Cash levels right now are really at 15-year lows. So it's definitely an impressive big picture. They're all in. So we still have a lot of concentration risk in investment in the equity market. But aside from that, given the fact that we're all-time highs, right? We just talked about the dealer gamma. Really, they're selling, against that 6,200, 6,150 in futures. We really need to get above that to have that kind of right tail chase higher. But for right now, talk a little bit about these two charts. First of all, this is skew, and because we always talk volatility on an options power hour, this is really a focused look at how skew has been pushing higher and higher, a little bit of a tell on kind of big premium for downside protection. So puts aren't as cheap, relatively speaking. You can comment on that. And then the other side, the flip side of that, is where we've got put call ratio at a very, very strong low. And we're talking relative to, oh goodness, not even since 2021. So this chart doesn't go back far enough. Point is, so we have not a lot of folks hedging. So, okay, riddle me, square this circle, whatever you want to call it. Comment on these two charts in particular.
I think the way the circle is squared a little bit is that we have such massive flows into zero DTE that they've really become kind of, they're now the dog, right? So we talk about the dog and the tail and all this kind of, where's the influence really coming from? You can see that there's a massive influence. And that's taking flow out of the monthlies and the weekly flows to some extent as people kind of position in the near term. They're using the sort of near term protection. So that looks like 1 day skew, longer term skew measures. If I'm, we just sort of looked at some measures of that, not as bad. So it's kind of, I think it's somewhat concerning because people are very, what's the word? They've got tunnel vision, complacent, myopic. I don't know what it is. You're sort of like kind of stuck in this small world of zero DTE and you're really sort of thinking about things from a daily standpoint, and maybe disregarding some of the broader needs to hedge positions. And so they're kind of eschewing the longer term hedges for some of the shorter term ones. And I'm kind of impressed in a way that people have sort of, really kind of pivoted to those short term measures and that they want to put in all this work and do this kind of on a daily basis.
It's exhausting.
But I think,
not my cup of tea.
No, that doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun. Now, for the most part, from a retail perspective, they're really big sellers in the zero DTE, which is positive in a sense because it piles positive gamma onto dealers. So that acts as a kind of a support, a kind of a clenching mechanism from a dealer's perspective. That's why markets maybe aren't getting too crazy during the day. But it does seem like we're getting to this new disregard. Remember, we sort of experienced that in the first 6 months of 2024. Really, people had left puts for dead. They sort of said, we're never going to need another put again. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing. Emotion, I've been doing this for almost 3 decades, and some things just repeat over and over and over again, fear and greed and everything in between. So maybe it kind of presents itself in different ways, but people didn't need protection anymore. And then we saw August 5th and September, et cetera, where everybody kind of had this sort of moment where they kind of rediscovered the need for protection. So maybe we're heading to that again. But maybe it's going to require sort of 3 or 4 more months of a complete disregard for protection. And then we'll see if there's kind of a come to Jesus moment at some point.
So I have already kind of shared with clients my thinking on this because I was pushed to look into Q2 as it relates to market direction. I was bullish, as you know, into Q1. So it wasn't really an issue for me that Q1 was going to be fine. Too much that we had to kind of get through as it relates to Trump headlines. But for the most part, I figured out early that NVIDIA is going to still keep the market going and semis are not ready to roll over. And basically option flow is very bullish. There's liquidity underneath the surface by Fed and Treasury. Treasury can't do a dang thing until August when they figure out what they're going to do with the debt ceiling. So there's no issuing of longer duration notes and bonds. So this is not liquidity sucking. And then we have TGA, which is a Treasury general account. And that's going to be basically supportive of markets until about April. Then we'll have a little jig there, and then it'll be supportive basically into that August timeframe. So we still have now TGA, by the way, just so you know, is they're drawing down in this Treasury General account into August, which is not fuel for a rally. It just means it's ballast. So I like to kind of equate it, I don't know, think submarine, right? You need ballast, whatever. It's not propulsion. It doesn't give it direction. It just gives the market the ability for when we do have a sell-off to get bid back up. So there is liquidity, there is ballast to keep the market afloat, kind of like that submarine. Now, of course, there can be triggers that cause interruption. For example, another round of yen carry trade unwind, which we had exactly in mid-July into the August 5th low, where we had that convexity short covering rally. So we could still have that, but we could also have war. For right now, it is very clear to me anyway, that there's so much effort being pushed into government deficit spending discussion, how to cut so that they can get their tax, how to cut the fat out of government, which is unfortunately a lot of labor shedding, which is going to hit jobless claims and hit economic growth at the same time, so they can push through the tax cuts toward the end of the year, which are critical. Otherwise, oh my God, talk about instant boom. So I understand the balancing act. And then on the war front, Thomas is asking, I'll look at that specifically, but on the war front, trying to negotiate an armistice between Russia and Ukraine, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be early or soon, but they're definitely giving up or trying to figure all that out, which would be very supportive. That combination of peace and cost cutting is very supportive for bonds, and it helps push interest rates down, which is supportive for equities. So I can see how this is going to go through for a few more months, but I really don't know how jobless claims are going to be felt by the market. So I think that's the one big drama piece. There's always no edge with NVIDIA earnings, and they will disappoint at some point. I don't think it's just yet. But the point is, I really think that the big piece that I'm looking for to kind of make that recession call that I had, right? It's unemployment. So that will trigger volatility. Right now, they're not worried about it. And I don't think we're going to have tomorrow be it. But they're definitely positioning for hedges. They've got some extremely large March calls that have come in for VIX in hundreds of thousands of contracts in, the 23, 24, 25 strike area all of a sudden. So, they're definitely positioning just in case that a macro trigger comes in to interrupt the flows.
Join Samantha and Hans at the next Macro to Micro Options Power Hour, held each Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Registration is free. Scan this QR code or click on the link in the description. Watch the full Options Macro to Micro Power Hour episode by clicking on the video here, and subscribe to LaDucTrading YouTube channel for more content.